11A is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement with Turn Up Knox to provide violence interruption street outreach programs in the city of Knoxville for an amount not to exceed $450,000.
Motion made to approve and seconded. Council members, we have several people signed up to speak in favor of this item. First is Pastor Vincent Jones, Jr. Pastor Jones, you could come to the podium and start by stating your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes to address council.
Greetings to this prestigious body. My name is Vincent M. Jones, Jr. I serve as the pastor of Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church that's located at 2137 Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue. And with that being said, as a preacher and as a pastor, I know that you all won't believe me when I say that I'm not going to utilize the entirety of my time. I don't blame you at all. But in all seriousness, I just want to commend you all for your efforts in regards to this initiative. As certainly when we lose the life of one within our city, we mourn together. We certainly mourn when there's an act of senseless violence. But I want to celebrate you all because we have an opportunity to celebrate together in regards of the work that is being done across the city of Knoxville. And I just wanted to continue to advocate on behalf of Turn Up Knox for all of their tremendous efforts within the community, not only within the East Knoxville community, but with all their efforts in regards to being about the business of saving lives. And I just want to commend you all for not giving up on hope. And certainly we cannot place a monetary value on any life, but we can all roll up our sleeves and we can get into the trenches together to give hope another chance. And I just wanted to commend the efforts of Turn Up Knox as they continue to work and be responsive when there's an issue of violence within our community. And it is my hope and it's my earnest prayer and plea that you will consider the continuation of supporting this organization. I want to commend each and every one of you all for what you do within the community. And I want to once again reiterate my support for this program. Thank you. And I didn't utilize my entire time.
Thank you. Next person signed up to speak in favor of item 11A is Kyle Pickle. Sorry. You could come to the podium and state your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 5 minutes as well.
Kyle Pickell,
Pickell.
2112 Thalia Street, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37917. Members of City Council, thank you for allowing me to speak with you. As I mentioned, my name is Kyle Pickell, and I'm here this evening to proudly stand alongside Turn Up Knox as a representative of the United Way of Greater Knoxville and Vine Middle Magnet School. In my role as the Community Schools Coordinator for Vine, it's my responsibility to advocate on behalf of those I have the honor to work for and with, our 400 students and families, 90 staff members, and the surrounding community. I'm here to ensure that their concerns, dreams, and aspirations are brought into this room so that their voices are heard. As a community school, we have crafted a shared vision. We're building more than just a school. We are creating a welcoming home for all, staff, students, families, and neighbors. When you come to our community, every person is valued, heard, and celebrated. To bring this vision to life, we need partners like Turn Up Knox, organizations that act with purpose and urgency. Their mission of creating safer communities through action by interrupting cycles of gun violence in Knoxville is felt deeply within our school. Turn Up Knox not only addresses violence, but also strengthens the fabric of our community by being physically present and emotionally invested. When our students, families, and staff express a need for more mentors and community members within our school, Turn Up Knox answered that call immediately. They don't just show up, they show up when it matters most. Their presence is cherished, their impact is real, and we are proud to call them a partner and a friend. On behalf of Vine Middle, I ask that you honor the hopes of our community by continuing to support Turn Up Knox. Their work directly contributes to the safer, healthier, and more connected future we all strive to build. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person signed up to speak in favor of this item is Sam Brown. Reverend Brown? If you could start by stating your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to
Yes,
5 minutes.
Sam Brown, Norwalk Avenue, 37914. I would ask that you all please, pardon my attire. I wasn't informed that I was in the top 3 to speak tonight. I thought I would be the wingman. But nonetheless, it gives me great privilege and honor to stand and speak on behalf of the great work that Turn Up Knox has been doing in our community and the effect that we've noticed in real time. Speaking as someone who has officiated and preached eulogies for persons who have fallen victim to gun violence, someone who has counseled families, who is counseling families through that process of grief and loss. And one of the refrains that I have heard continuously in our work is the great impact that Turn Up Knox has had on their experience as they navigate all of the things that they have to go through when experiencing a tragedy. I can speak firsthand to the commitment of Turn Up Knox and how they are always present when needed, and how they are indeed committed to this work. And also, with this coming as a recommendation from the Office of Community Safety, I believe that it is absolutely essential for us to follow the direction and leadership of the leader of that office, Ms. LaKenya Middlebrook, who I believe brings a very effective and much-needed lens to this work, as she is a product of the community most adversely affected by this. And so we're willing to stand behind her. We know that Turn Up Knox is a very, very important component of our violence reduction strategy, and we will continue with our presence to ensure that their reach goes further and higher and wider. And like my colleague, I also will not use the entirety of my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Council members, that concludes people who signed up to speak to this agenda item. I did want to bring to your attention that Denzel Grant, the Executive Director of Turn Up Knox, is here and available if you have questions. I'm sure he can give you stats, for example, about the 300 contacts they've made, the 82 referrals for service, dozens of community events. But I think I just want to say that they have my confidence. We all know that public safety is the most important job that the city does, and we also know from hard experience that the police can't do it alone. And so I think their name that they chose, Turn Up Knox, is indicative of one of their big roles. Is they show up in some very, very difficult, challenging situations. And whereas they might have done that in the past as community volunteers, now they do it as professionals with the training and de-escalation and violence interruption that helps them be more effective. And I know council is very well aware that last year we saw a 30% reduction in homicide. 30% reduction. That's lives saved. That's families who, instead of grieving the loss of a loved one or the incarceration of a person who committed the homicide, now have their loved ones with them. That's very, very valuable and important work, and Turn Up Knox is a big part of the reason that we have that reduction. I hope you'll continue to support this partnership. Any questions or comments on this agenda item? Councilmember Thomas.
Yes, just briefly, this is really confirming of our approach on this. I think we do have data now that shows in real terms that this has been effective. And as I've said before, this is consistent. The approach is consistent with what people in my neighborhood said early on before this was started. And apparently there was some wisdom on the street level because this is being implemented and it's working. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been shared communications by email of my concerns with the administration that haven't been fully addressed. The financial reporting is a large piece of that. This is a unique partnership between the city and this organization that received funding. Initially this was a partnership with SEED, and the funding went through SEED as Turn Up Knox was formed as an organization. But there was an expectation that there would be monthly reporting to Director Middlebrook's office. And so with that system in place, I anticipated that if a member of council were to ask about financial reports, those financial reports would be submitted before the day of our meeting. And they would be submitted as a part of the agenda, so they're a part of the public record. And I was also disappointed that the report that we received was incomplete. With the city's support and the collecting of monthly reports, we should be able to produce a more clear picture of what the activities have been over the last year, including expenditures. When we initially funded this program through SEED, a portion of that $450,000 was to go towards administrative costs for SEED to help with the development of a new organization. That is no longer a component of their budget. However, their budget hasn't shifted. So I think that there are some really reasonable questions that have still gone unaddressed. And in addition to that, even in the scope of work, there's a commitment to report to the community. And I don't have a sense of what members of the community are receiving. Regular updates. It's not just one annual report, but these are regular updates that community members should be receiving. And I would love to be one of those community members. I think that we should consider our city council members as a priority for receiving those regular updates so that we can be that point of contact for community members who themselves may have questions. So I feel like I've had some pretty reasonable requests for transparency and accountability that didn't come till today, even though this has been weeks that I've been asking for it. And for that reason and many others, I'm not able to support this contract today.
Councilmember Helsley.
Yes, is Mr. Stair here somewhere? Could you please come and explain the reporting, the 990, the working with SEED to, can you just address what she just said, please?
Yep.
Well, since I talked to you and you were the treasurer, okay, Denzel, do it. That's fine. Yes, that's the reason I was asking you, and you're the one I spoke with, so. That's okay. Okay, he can do it.
You can raise the podium if you need to.
Can
There's
I?
a little button. Well, it's an electronic switch, but maybe the microphone will do it. That'd be enough.
Yes, good evening, city council members, mayor, community members. My name is Denzel Grant. In terms of our finances, as Mrs. Hesley mentioned, our 990 hasn't been completed for the year. With Turn Up Knox shifting to a fiscal year of January to January, and our funding coming from the city being September to September, a full year hasn't been able to be completed. We have sent over a statement of activity in regards to our finances, and I'm more than welcome to answer any questions in terms of where the finances are going.
Ms. Helsley, did you have any more particular questions for Mr. Grant or other
Just that he
board
could
members?
address, because I think in a conversation I had with the treasurer, all that was discussed. There was question about their 501c3 status, which I understand they have a letter that they did receive that status on June 24th of this year. As far as like, there was a good sum of money paid to Seed to, I guess, be a pass-through for you all, basically, as a
Correct.
fiscal sponsor.
Correct.
I don't know what she's talking about, I mean, but that was a substantial amount of money. And now that you're 501c3, I guess you don't have to do that anymore, right?
Correct.
So, I mean, when will the 990 be up? Does anybody know?
Well, with the deadline is November 15th.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're looking in within the next 30 days, we should have our 990 completed.
Right. And then the other thing I did ask Mr. Stair to do was if he could put your board members on your website, which is always helpful and looks, and it wasn't on there when I looked, and so that's easy enough to do since I now know who they are.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you for everything you do.
Thank
We're
you.
grateful.
Thank you. Director Middlebrook, did you have some information?
Well, I was just going to add, separate and apart from the 990s, I believe the monthly reporting to the city was referenced. And so the Office of Community Safety does receive monthly reports. It is generally has not been our practice to, for any of the programming or anything that we do, whether it's grants or service contracts, to release those reports regularly. But where those reports are requested, they are typically shared. Whether those are programming reports or financial reports. And so I did receive, I think, some requests yesterday with regards to reports. And so we are typically, we are able to access those reports digitally. And so we can more than willing to compile both programmatic and financial reports and share them. But we do receive reports from Turn Up Knox, both programmatic and financial reports that are separate and apart from, their annual filings and anything that would be audited. They share that information with us on a monthly basis.
Okay, Councilmember McKenzie?
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm not certain, this may be a Ms. Middlebrook question. I'm a little confused, and I may be looking at two different years. On page 46, we see the proposed budget, and then we also see the.
Could you use your microphone a little bit? Yeah,
I'm
There you
sorry.
go.
On page 46, we see the proposed budget, and we see a breakdown on staffing. But we also have that on page 53. Am I looking at two different years potentially? Maybe 23 versus 22?
Director Middlebrook or Mr. Grant, either of you can.
So I believe what you're looking at on page 46, beginning on page 46, is a more broad programming budget for the organization as a whole. And what you see on page 53 is specific to our funding piece. So I think in the previous year, you all only saw the overall program budget, but what we did ask for was a more specific detailing of how city funds would be allocated within the program budget. So as you can see there that the overall program budget is larger than the city share. On page 46, it's a larger program budget than the city share.
Okay, correct. But when I'm looking at the two different, even on a salary perspective, I'm seeing some gaps there. So there's like from 53, page 53 to 46, there's some that have increases of $35,000 to $25,000. So am I seeing that the city is providing, our funding provides for that total amount of staffing or a portion of that? Or do we?
Only a portion of the staffing.
Only a portion of the staffing. And do we don't have that probably percentage level?
I don't have it broken down as a percentage, I'm sorry.
Okay. And so I think, one of my concerns and what's, that I will share that's been brought to my attention is that the city we do provide over 90% of the budget, of the, budget funding for this organization. And the question was, that I just recently got in, was what percent of funding does the city provide to an organization before we view it as an entity are falling under the city's umbrella? And is there any examples that we have where we have funded an organization?
I'll
to
give
this
an
degree?
example, the Family Justice Center. We provide the lion's share of their funding. I don't know the exact percentage, but it's just the city and then federal grant. And again, similar to Turn Up Knox, they're a relatively new 501c3, and they're trying to bolster their fundraising. And I believe, Mr. Grant, they just had their first fundraiser, the Sneaker Ball, which I was fortunate enough to attend. It was a lot of fun, and I think you raised some money. And I think Turn Up Knox is also, it used to be just city funds, and since and last year you've received a few grants from outside other entities. And I think Councilmember McKenzie wants to know if you're going to keep growing that, and so that you can not be as dependent on the city.
Absolutely, and that's really been our goal since day one is exploring other options in terms of finances. With us receiving our 501c3 status here recently, even before then, we've been able to bring in private donations. We received a grant from the University of Tennessee. We received multiple grants from NICJR. The Appalachian Fund has also committed a certain amount of funding to us. So we are exploring other funding options. We've actually been able to bring in an additional $115,000 on our own, which actually, I mean, that's 20% of our budget, right? So we actually would only be relying on our budget. That's about 80% of what our budget would be coming from the city. So we definitely look forward to, exploring other funding options as well.
Okay. And so I think the example of the city funding to a nonprofit, the Family Justice Center would be that example that we are providing 80 to 90%, it sounds like, of their.
I think that's the closest comparison I can think of off the top of my head.
Okay.
And again, it used to be, just 100%, city funded, and it, so it's hard. It's hard to be a new 501c3, but I think Turn Up Knox has grown a lot in the last couple of years, from not existing to starting up, getting a board, so I think there's more improvements and maturing yet to come. But I personally am very impressed with their progress, which is why, I'm proposing that their contract be renewed. But I don't expect it to stop now. It's going to continue to progress and evolve and have a more varied sources of revenue than just the city.
Right. And I understand just getting your 501c3 just this year. What were some of the barriers that you all, is my time up? I guess I need to.
Well, you can, why don't you finish that sentence,
Yeah.
and then we'll move on to the answer and other council members.
What were the barriers that you're, if you can speak to it, it may be a board question, that was encountered in your 501c3 process?
To start off, the IRS was backed up. IRS was backed up. Eric, I can't get his last name.
Eric Amarante.
Yeah, the professor at the College of Law, he helped us during that process. It took him a while. We had to fill out a long form, being that we were receiving more than $50,000. So we had to do a long form application, which took a while. And just being honest, we didn't have the support that we expected the first year. Our fiscal sponsor, they didn't support us the way they needed to. So we were learning it on the fly. And so here we are.
Okay, thank you.
Council Member Fugit.
Thank you, Mayor. No real questions, just an observation of someone who also tries to raise money to support a worthy cause. There are lots of fabulous worthy causes in our city, and it takes a while to have people get used to something new, especially a project that is unknown, untested, and people are unfamiliar with in this community. So it is going to have to be heavily funded by government and/or grants, and it will probably always have to be mostly funded that way. The private philanthropic community will come along, but it will come along more slowly. So I just think the reality is everyone thinks it's really easy to try to raise money until you try to do it. And it is, yes, you need to do more. I need to do more for mine. It is forever a challenge, but it is hard to stand up something, especially a new concept, to try to build the story to get people to invest in you. So thank you, and continue to do the hard work.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilmember Parker?
Thank you, Mayor. A few points. So to respond to the 990, we received a finance report last year. It also arrived late, so it wasn't a part of the agenda or the public record. But if they can send us a full finance report last year, it doesn't make sense to me that they can't send it this year. On the issue of the $450,000, what they're asking for is a contract from the city that's at $450,000. They haven't given us a $550,000 budget. What they've given us are how they expect to spend the city's $450,000, which includes doubling staff pay from last year for 2 staff. The additional $100,000 is funding that they hope to raise, is what they've said. Or perhaps Mr. Grant has said they've already raised that $100,000. But their budget is fully covered by city funds. If they have raised 10% of their budget, then we should cut at least 10% from the $450,000. Or not even, perhaps even more if we don't agree with doubling the wages of the current staff. The other issue I wanted to bring up was the reporting. The reporting that I'm talking about, well, some accountability from the Office on Community Safety would be welcome, as I've been asking for these reports from Denzel directly, Mr. Grant. And then when I did not get them, I did follow up with Ms. Middlebrook, who was also a part of those conversations. The reports I'm talking about are on page 41. Collect, evaluate, report, de-identified data regarding program participants, program activities, and outcomes back to the communities and members affected by violence, to the Office of Community Safety, relevant stakeholders. What I'm asking is if this is information that is supposed to be regularly shared back to the community, impacted community, so we have an understanding of what our violence reduction program is like, please include city council members in that list of stakeholders. If the intention is for you to come back before us for a $450,000 grant that fully funds the organization. Now, I understand the politics involved here. I know I'm wasting my breath, but I gotta get it on the record, because this is not acceptable, and better can be done. And some folks have questioned, well, the numbers are going down, just be happy that the numbers are going down. The reason why I supported a violence interruption program rather than increasing the law enforcement budget is because I believe that how you go about reducing that violence is extremely important. And I want my city committed to addressing those root causes, helping build a community of violence interrupters, a community of strong community-based organizations that will not only be here once the city's not handing out $450,000 gifts, but have a foundation that they'll be able to serve our community long after this current interest in funding these programs. And so that's why I want the details of what's happening, because I do see Knoxville engaging in too many pretextual stops. I know Memphis tried to pass an ordinance to adopt some police reform, and the state government said, no, Memphis, y'all can't do that. Memphis tried to limit pretextual stops. State government said, y'all can't do that. So city council can't adopt an ordinance, but we can promote a culture that upholds the constitutional rights of our residents, even if the state isn't going to allow us to put laws in place to ensure that happens. And so I don't want any kind of community-based groups to be used as a front or a cover. I want to be able to know what y'all are doing and celebrate it. And so I'm just asking for that transparency and that accountability.
Vice Mayor Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the questions around financial accountability, and I think there's been a lot of good questions raised tonight. But I don't want to miss the forest for the trees. You all have evidence and plenty of data for all that have ears that are willing to hear that you have curbed retaliatory violence among youth in our community. So it may be a bit hyperbolic, but I'd pay one person $450,000 to do that. So the fact that you all have created an organization that is young and that is figuring its way and have a measurable change in our community and saving young deaths is commendable. I think it's not lost on me that we had a week last week of dealing with volatile situation, and I think you all deal with those every day, and the two are very similar. So you all have done great work, and I think we, as a city, fund more than 100 nonprofits in some way, shape, or form, and I don't hear us requiring monthly reporting and to the level detail that's been requested tonight. So. And I would suggest that you all are doing as important, if not more important work than many. I do want to ask either Mr. Grant, I got to, again, for those that are willing to hear, I sat with you and listened to a lot of the changes that you all have undergone.
Yep.
And Director Middlebrook, maybe you could weigh in here too. What has changed from where you started and where you are now? I'm specifically interested in tactics. So maybe you were all over town and now you're in two parts of town now, or now you're only involved in certain types of violence. Where have you found your sweet spot in terms of making a measurable impact that you've learned over the past year?
I can speak from our perspective. First year, learning the work, right? Understanding what it is, focusing on educating ourselves. I think we've stepped into a place where we've been, we're more community informed on what goes on in our community. And so while myself and our staff had those connections, we build trust and partnerships with not only community members, but organizations who are also out there engaging every day with individuals. And I think, Councilwoman Parker mentioned having community members, having organizations that support the work that we do. We get tremendous amount of support. The support is overwhelming. And like I said, it doesn't just come from community members, but it comes from organizations, clergy, and just many people in our community. So I think that truly was the difference. We did center on youth early on, which that's part of the proactiveness of the work. And so now that we're dialed in, we're actually engaging with more high-risk individuals. We're able to build the capacity of introducing intensive life coaching into our program. I think that's what you're seeing in terms of the difference that's being made. And when you talk about a 33% reduction the first year, we're looking to finish the year off with a 46. Right now, we're at 46% reduction in non-fatal shootings. And based on data that I could find, this will be the first year in 6 years that Black men and women will die at a lesser rate than our counterparts. And so, there's no question that what we're doing is working. So,
thank you for that. Director Middlebrook?
Yes, just to reiterate, especially on the kind of last piece of what Mr. Grant shared with regard to the intentionality and the focus of the work, I think initially being this space being new, I think, to a lot of us, and especially as a city and the organization developing and forming, a lot of time was spent in the initial year and a half or so, really building a structure for the organization, building, for lack of a better term, kind of building the brand, helping to make sure that folks in the community knew that the organization existed and what it was kind of intended to do, and finding those points of engagement to really begin to develop and nurture some of those existing relationships that folks within the organization maybe had as individuals, but thinking about how those relationships could grow and evolve to impact the organization and getting folks familiar with the work, and then also making sure that the staff and volunteers, because they do also engage volunteers in this work, and some of those volunteers eventually become staff, which is fantastic, but making sure that they were really growing professionally in the space, because this is professional work, right? This is a profession. And so, thinking about what training looked like and engaging in various trainings to understand the techniques, the tactics, and how these roles fit into the larger community-based violence reduction ecosystem, I think was really critical. And I have to shout out, while I have the mic, where's Emmanuel? Emmanuel Hernandez, who is here with us today, is a program manager with the National Institute for Criminal Justice Reform, who is here today for the purposes of doing some of these trainings that we're talking about. And so really thinking about how the work becomes more focused and more intentional on those at very high risk for engaging in violence, because these strategies are not intended to be broad sweeping. It's not intended to be have a super far reach. It's intended to really engage those individuals who are at highest risk. And so thinking about how we can not only see the benefits of the broader community impact and the engagement that's happening with community building and the great work that's happening. Thank you to the staff from Community Schools from Vine for coming and talking about the impact that this organization is able to have on their school community, which is super important, but digging into really thinking about how we are engaging those at highest risk for participating in violence. And so when you see the life coaching pilot come into place, that's what that's really designed for, to connect those folks to the resources and the services and supports that they need to hopefully make a different choice. So it's become a lot more focused.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Singh.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to point out, Ms. Middlebrook, do you remember, it was during the COVID years, which is all a blur, but if it was February 2021, where there were 25 homicides by February or March, and a lot of those were African American, a lot of those were kids. And that's when we started some of these really serious conversations. We're forgetting what we came from to where we are right now. At the time, I was requesting $4 million to fund people who were already working in the community to continue doing this work. I'd still love to see that, but on a tenth of that money, we've done pretty good. This is not the end-all, be-all, or the solution. We still need to work on the poverty issues that are the root causes of it. But I think this is a good place that the phrase "stop the bleeding," I think that's been pretty effective. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember McKenzie?
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree with your comments, Councilwoman Singh. And also, I don't want anyone sitting around this table or in this room to think that I do not appreciate or value the work that Turn Up Knox is doing. That is not my point at all. I also just want us to make sure that we recognize, as Councilwoman just mentioned, that we have other partners that are also in this lane, that have been in this lane. And I think you guys have collaborated, and some of those folks have worked with you all. And this is a joint effort. What I think differentiates Turn Up Knox is that there is the opportunity that you have to resources as far as collaboration with the police department and other entities, with the violence reduction leadership team, which to me is invaluable. And so I want you guys to know that I do very much appreciate the work that you do. I'm in the community as well, and so I know what you do, I hear what you do, I see what you do. And so pray for you all, as well as the other people who are out on the front line that are doing the work as well. And so I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas?
Yes, I just wanted to mention also the cost of gun violence. And, we're having to pay substantial money. I think it's well justified. The cost of gun violence without doing anything, according to some figures, is $1.5 million per homicide, $700,000 per non-fatal shootings. just the amount of money in instances of violence that we have to pay to the court system, incarcerating people, the police department, et cetera. That's just kind of a fraction. I don't know, can't nail down exactly 1.5 million per homicide, but what we can say with confidence is gun violence is really expensive. So if we want to get down just to dollars and cents, we have to invest in preventing it in order to prevent more expenditures in other ways.
Councilmember Thomas, I'm not sure where you got those figures, but we actually, in partnership with NICJR, have a report on the specific to Knoxville cost of gun violence, which is up on the website. We can send you a link if we haven't already, but yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah, that's what I was
Yeah.
quoting from.
Okay, you're quoting from that,
Thank you.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I just want to just reiterate, that's specific to Knoxville, not just some national figure. And that, of course, that doesn't measure the human cost per se, it's just the numbers, but they're both obviously quite substantial, so thank you for bringing that up. Councilmember McKenzie.
And my last comment, I also want to be clear, as Turn Up Knox knows and others who are working out in the field, that the violence that we experience in our community is not just around gun violence, that there is significant acts of violence that happen as well. So I know that we look at those statistics, but you all also know, and I'm sure you go on calls that you get maybe outside the police that are not gun-related, but are very dangerous and sometimes life-threatening, and their fatalities as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Councilmember Singh.
Just one last comment. One, my math was wrong, sorry about that. But also, I've seen the monthly violence leadership meetings. I'm not calling it the right thing, but you guys are always present there and you always do a report on your programming. It would be helpful if all the other council members that don't make it to that meeting could get that information.
Absolutely.
Are we invited? It's open to the public.
It's open to the public, yeah. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-1.